Hello aspirants, now looking at editorials in question bank for 11th November. The first editorial in the Hindu newspaper today is Making Climate Rules at Marrakesh. So this is regarding the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So it has annual conference of parties. So this is COP, Conference of Parties, COP22, which is taking place in Marrakesh in Morocco, which is in Africa. So this is in continuation of last year's COP. So last year's COP21 was in Paris, where the Paris Agreement was finalized. So this Marrakesh COP is significant because in this COP, in this conference, we'll have the decisions taken on enhancing financing and ensuring technology transfer, which is vital for the Paris Agreement to become effective. So Paris Agreement has already entered in force as the prerequisites were completed. That is 50% of the people of the countries have already signed the treaty, who are contributing to 50% of the global greenhouse emissions. So on November 4, Paris Agreement has also come into force too. So this editorial is actually talking about Marrakesh and how it is of significance even for India. So in this, we have the basic principle of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities, which are already part of the UNFCCC. So equity means not equality, means every country should be treated based on its responsibility and its capacity. So equity, not equal treatment but equivalent treatment, means if a country is resulting in more emissions and India picks up emissions per capita. So as per emissions, Indian emissions are high, but as per emissions per capita, Indian emissions are quite low. So equity means as much as you contribute, that much you take up as your responsibility too. And common but differentiated responsibility means that we have a common responsibility to tackle climate change, but it's differentiated based on, again, the way, the capacity which you have. Means developed countries have already done emissions and now they have stabilized the emissions and are able monetarily, financially to implement clean technologies. And developing countries have not reached that level of development. They are still developing, the emissions are high. So responsibility should be differentiated. And the developed countries should assist the developing countries through funding and technology transfer. Clean technology should be transferred to them. There should not be patents being put on them and they becoming very costly and these countries do not get those technologies. So that is what the whole issue is all about. So this is again Indian case also, that we have to fight for these objectives and ensure that this takes place. One point pointed out is that there is no carbon budget system in Paris Agreement, because in Kyoto Protocol there were fixed responsibilities based on the contributions. Developed countries had mandatory responsibilities that they have to bring down carbon emissions, but then for developing countries there were none. So that did not actually succeed. Many countries like Canada backed out of Kyoto Protocol. USA had never signed Kyoto Protocol. So now in the present Paris Agreement, this carbon budget system has not been put in, but what we have is the countries have to give their own INDCs, intended nationally determined contributions, that what the country itself thinks that it will do to combat climate change. So India has also submitted its INDCs. Once it's ratified Paris Agreement, it has become a nationally determined contribution which is mandatory for India to fulfill. So those aspects are highlighted. So adapting green technologies in power generation, which is having a long lock-in effect, because once you put in investment here, the results would come out after a long time. So it may take decades also. So this requires sufficient funding which only developed countries can make available. So that is the significance here. So it will help in bringing down pollution levels too, and also it will result in green technologies being applied for the long-term benefit also, and to implement provisions under the Paris Agreement. So that is what is pointed out. Also, the Paris Agreement has a new regime of transparency. So as you see here too, the objective is to keep global temperatures not rise above 2 degrees Celsius. So the global temperatures should stay below 2 degrees Celsius. This is the objective of Paris Agreement by the end of this century, means by 2100. And also it says that aspiration should be to reduce it even up to 1.5 degrees Celsius rise. So this, it says that even with the INDCs which the countries have submitted right now, presently it looks bleak. chances of achieving this target is very low. Also, another provision put in is that every 5 years, every country's contributions will be reviewed, and this review will start from 2023, and then they would take place every 5 years. So that is also highlighted. Also, under the Paris Agreement, developed countries have to provide $100 billion every year till 2025 to the developing countries for climate financing. And as they spoken of, all countries are to report regularly to the UNFCCC about the emissions and how they are putting in efforts to reduce them. So this is the new transparency and accounting system which has been put in place. So that is what is being talked about in the editorial too, and it says that India has to make arrangements to abide by this provision also. Also, there are some negative aspects too, because of again Donald Trump being elected as the president of USA, because during his campaigning he had talked against the Paris Agreement, and also he had spoken of that USA can exit from the Paris Agreement too, but whether such thing would happen or not cannot be said right now. USA has already ratified Paris Agreement, so we'll have to wait and watch. But the most probably such a thing should not take place. So this is regarding again the Paris Agreement and the key points in it. As we have seen, by 2100, keep temperatures well below 2 degrees Celsius is the main objective. Then the next is, this is regarding the emissions. Who is the largest emitter? It is China presently, overtaken USA already. USA, EU together is an emitter, and India stands fourth. Country-wise, India is third. So this is Indian emissions too, overall emissions. But if you look at emissions per capita, then India goes quite low. It is only 1.5, where other countries like Australia, USA have very high contributions, Canada, Russia. So that is C. Then the next editorial is Theresa May's underwhelming visit. So this is regarding British Prime Minister Theresa May, who recently visited India. So it was not overwhelming, rather underwhelming. So there were many hopes especially on the visa issue between India and UK, but then nothing came forth. So the two MOUs which were signed during this visit, one was on ease of doing business and another on intellectual property rights. So UK stays adamant and does not want to relax the stringent immigration and visa norms which it has initiated, which has also resulted in drastic reduction in number of immigrations which have taken place, especially Indian students visiting UK. So that has taken place. India is the third largest investor in UK. Also, UK is the largest investor from the G20 countries in India. So India-UK trade relations are strong. Even after Brexit, in UK and India are having plans to negotiate a trade treaty also. So that would also take place of a new FTA, free trade agreement, which would be discussed, but that will take at least 2 years. By the time UK is still a part of EU and Brexit has not been finalized. So till that time it is having obligations under EU treaties only. It cannot have separate FTA with any country. So that will also take place. But presently the immigration norms are being targeted, because as we saw, Brexit is also an indication towards protectionism and inclusive and exclusiveness, means we Britishers not allowing outsiders to come in the country. So on those sentiments, again UK has denied to relax the norms. Rather, 3 days before her visit to India, UK had announced new restrictions on overseas Indians. So a two-tier visa rule system has been initiated, under which students will be given visas based on quality of course. So this is also there. So these are the issues presently between the two countries. What she announced was not as desired. She announced entry relaxation norms for frequent flyers to UK. So that is not anything related to visa. That would be easy exit from the airports and facilities provided related to entry and immigration at the airports. So that was the case. So this is about the number of Indians in UK too, and this is the percentage of the total population. So there's a huge Indian community in UK, and this has been a relation of history because of even Britain being a colonial power in India. So there is around 6.2% of the population in London is Indians. So you can see this here. So this is about this editorial. Next we look at the question bank. So the question which we have put forth for 11th November there were two articles based on which we have put a question. The lead article is on Naxalism, and then is another article on the demonetization of the currency. So these two articles have been picked up for a question. The other article is on as an interview of Sri Lankan President Sri Sena, which we have already discussed in news, so we can skip it here. We don't want to go in very much detail on those aspects. This is a question on money laundering, the demonetization issue. The question is, Government of India recently announced that rupees 500 and 1000 notes in circulation till the midnight of November 8 will no longer count as a legal tender. What are the reasons for such a move? Discuss its pros and cons. So reasons are actually pros too. So we know about this initiative. The reasons for this being, one was bringing the tax evaders on the radar of the taxmen. So tax avoidance is a crime, so it should be tackled on those lines. So removal of black money within India. So that was one aspect. Second is also it will result in corruption being targeted. So corrupt practices can be eliminated through this. Then the third aspect is also the counterfeit currency issue, which was highlighted, how terror financing takes place through these counterfeit currencies, so which is destabilizing the country. So that was a strong reason mentioned. So these are the cases. Now the cons of this initiative, because this is a one-time act. So black money will be unearthed right now. But once these new currencies come into the hands of the people, then there is no step which can be taken to ensure that this does not go black. So that is, further generation of black money will not be tackled. So that means that over a period of time, after some years, again such a practice is required to ensure black money is unearthed. So this is a huge convenience for the people actually. So what is required along with this initiative is that the black money should be tackled at source. So black money is generally in the form of even buying commodities, so like gold being brought, or any other commodity property being brought. Such transactions have to be taken place online, through not through cash but through the banking system, not online but through the banking system. So if transactions take place through banks, so then this will ensure that the black economy does not flourish again. So this is one suggestion mentioned. Also another aspect mentioned is that the black money targeted here in this exercise is only black money which is in the form of cash. But people who have black money in the form of foreign assets are not worrying. Also people who have black money in some other form, like in terms of property, benami property which they may have, also in the form of gold, then there is nothing which they are worried about. So these are also aspects which are to be considered when this exercise is initiated. So that is highlighted. Then again, tax evasion issue, again that has to be sternly imposed so that it is ensured that in future too such tax evasions do not take place. Also it says that historically demonetization of currency is generally taken place when inflation levels were high. So to cleanse the economy on those lines, but presently inflation levels have not been high, because in 1946 also when demonetization was done, that was the time when inflation levels were quite high post the World War II. So that was the case even later too. Even Weimar Germany, after the World War, during that time World War I, it had also undertaken demonetization. So that was also a case of hyperinflation. So generally those are the reasons, but here that reason is not the case. So that is what is highlighted, that though this exercise has taken place, but alone by itself it is not sufficient. It requires other initiatives too, which government has to take in to ensure that we don't go back to the former system again. So black money generation has to be targeted at source from now on. So that is highlighted. Then the next question is, Naxalism has been a source of unrest in many remote stretches in India. Discuss the strategy adopted by the government to eliminate Naxalism. So there is a lead article on Naxalism presently because of the exercise, joint exercise of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh government against Naxalites, left-wing extremists. But then the lead article does not have any significant point. So what I have done, though the issue is important for us, GS paper 3 security wants us to study on this aspect. So I have picked up other articles, the links for which are provided, based on which this content has been prepared. So Naxalism started in India in 1967. You must have heard the names of Charu Majumdar and others who initiated this. So this was in regions, in remote areas of India which were deprived of development. So left-wing extremism, Maoism flourished here talking of government of the people and excluding the central government from these regions because of it not being able to provide development to these people. So initially when this movement started, later it also turned violent too, and over a period of time now it has lost the touch with the original objective too. So it has become extremely brutal to even the people in those regions. So that is also seen. So government should take advantage of this and ensure that it eliminates left-wing extremism from the root. But then there are two aspects to it. It is not just by force that this can be eliminated, because there are still people who support it. So what has to be targeted is also development in these regions, which was the genesis, the reason for this movement to have erupted. So that has to be targeted as well. So it's called a two-pronged strategy which is required to tackle Naxalism. So that is what is discussed. Even in 2008, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh said that Naxalism is the greatest threat to our Indian security, internal security. So that is one statement of significance showing how much Naxalism has penetrated into the country. Over the years now, in 2015 also, Naxalism has gone drastically low. Again it has been in news. So they try to regroup themselves and become powerful again. So government has to come down strongly on them, but it needs people's support. There are some controversial initiatives also started. One is Salwa Judum. So Salwa Judum were armed people, the common people, the tribals in this region, who were prepared by the government forces against the Naxalites. So they would pick up arms and attack the Naxalites or fight with the Naxalites. So this initiative had been criticized as a human rights violation and violation of the law and order system. People cannot be empowered to attack and kill others, whoever they may be. So this was one controversial aspect which had been initiated. So of course Salwa Judum is not the right way to go ahead with. So this also shows that people in various regions are also frustrated with these Naxalites. So of course power and technology has to be used. The modern arms ammunitions should be provided to the armed forces in these regions to fight with the Naxalites and eliminate them. But then people's development has to be given equal, or rather more importance to, because once development comes in, once people are empowered and see progress, then there is no reason for Naxalism to persist. So that is also there. So both have to be taken together. People's support for them should be cut. So that is there, and people's threat from them has to be cut through use of armed forces to providing security and law and order in these regions. So this is what has been discussed. The reasons for rise of Naxalism is social inequity and exploitation, alienation of forest land. This is one important aspect, because forest has been the resource used by the tribals, because these Naxal affected regions are also mostly tribal regions. So tribals depend on forests. But then after independence too, the government's policy has been that the forest belongs to the government department, government forest department. So they are deprived of their rights. But then we had the Forest Rights Act passed. So this act actually provides right to minor forest produce to these tribals. So this is also a positive initiative which tries to eliminate this alienation of forest land which they feel. Then another aspect is rurals, tribals and agriculturalists are laborers. So they are landless laborers in many cases too. So this aspect and reform here is also essential. Then even urban middle class youth gave support to them. So this we have seen even during 1967 and during the time of emergency too, when Naxalites were brought down heavily with use of force. So many urban youths also supported the Naxalites, and also the villagers were highlighted this. They were made aware and educated about the condition, about their situation, and a fight against emergency and such situations was raised by the youth. The urban youth gave the leadership here too. So that was there. Presently this has come down drastically, but still in some sections this still prevails. Urban youth attracted towards Naxalism. Then next is about tackling Naxalism, what initiatives government has taken. So one is of course modernizing the police force, socio-economic development. So these are the two-pronged strategies. The Forest Rights Act, as I spoke of 2006. So this has also given some rights back to the tribals now. Then another aspect is about creating awareness amongst the communities about the left-wing extremist groups, their methodologies and how it is harmful to the people themselves. So that is also important. Providing modern technologies, of course drones, unarmed aerial vehicles is important. So then the other, of course, the development aspect is about providing education, health, better roads, better communication technology. Many BSNL towers have also been brought in established in these remote tribal areas to bring them development and new technology, mobile phones in these regions, so that they are also brought into the fold of inclusive growth and development, and extremism can be eliminated. So that is what is important. So this is regarding Naxalism too. You can see the Naxal affected regions in India. They are majorly concentrated in these regions: Bihar, Jharkhand. These are highly affected regions shown here: Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, the eastern part of Maharashtra too. They are also presently said to be moving towards south. So Karnataka, Kerala, these are marginally affected areas in grey, moderately affected in yellow. So that is about it. So these are the two questions from the question bank. You can have the PDF downloaded from the website, the link for which is provided in the description. Thank you so much.